I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hey, y'all, I'm Molly Barrows. Welcome to the Gulf Coast Confidential podcast, where we cover some of the most scandalous crimes and cases that bubble up right here in Northwest Florida and beyond. And today we're talking about one of those beyond Northwest Florida cases. As always, joining me is Pam Hill, pharmacist and victims advocate. She's experienced violent crime in her own life and, of course, brings a unique perspective to a lot of these crazy cases that we talk about here on Gulf Coast Confidential. This certainly falls into the crazy case category and tragic as well.
Yes.
So this episode is called The Menards Vanish. Did doomsday prepper murder elderly couple at family-friendly nudist ranch? So this case just happened. It's very new, just now starting to make headlines. It began last weekend with the disappearance of the Menards, an elderly couple who, by all accounts, were well-known, well-loved at their church and their community by most of their neighbors at Dell Ranch, which is a self-described family-friendly nudist resort in Colton, California. And Pam, you're the one that brought this case to my attention, and it is just insane.
It's bizarre. It's almost like we're in it because it's still happening as we speak.
Yes.
I checked on some of the updates this morning. It's still happening. Like you said, it happened on 8/24 a week ago, and they went missing, the couple, and their little dog named Cuddles is missing. But it's not been in the real news, you know, the big news. I've seen it on the internet, and sometimes I'd get a message, people are talking about this, because I go into some of the chats about cases. And so there we are, and I'm thinking, nudist there, that got my attention.
Sure.
And what they were fighting about on the internet is the usual cray-cray. You know, they're like, how come y'all had to put nudist in the title?
Well, that's where they were.
That's right. They weren't at Target, so we say they're at the nudist colony.
Right. Oh, my gosh. Well, and I thought it was interesting, too, and I started to read up on it, how well-liked they were by their neighbors, all except for the one that was right next door who's now charged with killing them. That's right. This one guy, 62-year-old Michael Royce Sparks, known to his neighbors as Sparky, which sounds so fun and innocent, but this guy apparently, according to police, is not. And he lived next door to the Menards at this nudist ranch, and he was arrested for their murder just a couple of days ago, so less than a week after they disappeared. And here's just a little rundown. Police with Redlands Police Department in San Bernardino County in California have charged Sparky with murder in connection to their disappearance. 79-year-old Daniel Menard, who is diabetic and has dementia, as well as his wife, 73-year-old Stephanie Menard, who walks with a cane. And the couple was last spotted apparently leaving their home, and a friend got worried, hadn't seen him. They hadn't shown up to church, and that was unusual. They definitely were active in their church, according to news reports and neighbors. And so this friend reported them missing around 10 a.m. last Saturday, you know, on August 24th. And that was when police also learned that their cute little white dog, a Shih Tzu named Cuddles, had also vanished. And I noticed in comments on social media, people are super worried about that puppy dog. And I mean, it's understandable. It's super cute and sweet.
Not more so than the humans.
But that's it. You and
I
think, are in agreement on that. Sometimes I do feel like people maybe sympathize with the animals more so than the people. And in some cases, I certainly can understand. They are innocent, but I also grieve for human life.
Of course,
as well.
Yeah. Well, and then the neighbor next door, Sparky, he basically was a prepper, a doomsday prepper.
Yeah, he looks like a doomsday
he
prepper.
does.
Not to stereotype, but he has that.
But he does.
Right, Ruby Ridge look going on, you know?
For real. And then he would isolate a little bit. He would ask one of the neighbors that lived, I think, on the other side, can you take me to Home Depot? I need to buy some concrete. So she said, I'm taking him all the time. And I asked him, you know, the way humans interact is always interesting to me. She said, I took him to Home Depot and I asked him, what do you need all this concrete for, Sparky? He said, I got projects to do. And so, like, when the police came to his house, because the beginning of this, they said, foul play is suspected. You know, in most of these things where someone goes missing, they say, no foul play is suspected right away.
Right.
So the next thing you know, while I'm watching this, is what they call a tat cat. It looks like a little tank. This is the way they tried to get him to come to the door the regular way, and he wouldn't come to the door.
Well, before we get into all that, let's talk a little bit about just some of the weird stuff about when this couple went missing and how they even pinned him down. I think to your point, he was a quote unquote person of interest pretty much right out the gate. And it didn't take him long to narrow it down to him, because the Menards' car was found unlocked down the road from their home. And the same friend who alerted police, she had let herself into their house. They all live pretty close together in this ranch. And these are mobile homes that they've jazzed up, if you will. There's porches and different ways that they've made these houses comfortable and added on to. But anyway, she walked in, she found Stephanie's purse. She sees her cane. She sees both of their cell phones are there, all items that there's no way they would have left the house without. And of course, the missing dog too is a concern. So these are all things that they would not have left behind. This immediately makes her think something bad has happened. Police obviously agree. They start talking to the neighbors. They realize that old Sparky next door had no love lost for these folks. Even though they were well liked, he had made it known to neighbors that he didn't like the Menards, especially Dan Menard, because I guess there was a tree growing on the Menards property that perhaps, I guess, gave him some shade. That wasn't what he said, but he didn't like it that Dan was trimming it. So that would be my guess. Is that he said that it, leaned over his property and he didn't like that he was trimming it. So he, quote unquote, hated the Menards for trimming that tree. So anyway, police started taking a closer look at him. And then when they wanted to talk to him, they realized they couldn't get a hold of him. And that's when they started saying, hey, this guy perhaps may have some violent tendencies. Let's be careful and cautious about how we approach this, since he's not coming to the door if he is in there. And then to your point, that's when this weird tank thing comes into the picture. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And before they brought in the tank, they had a camera that they normally use for, like, it would snake through pipes essentially, and something that they could use to evaluate sewage blockages. So they put this in his house, and that's when they find there's this room beneath his home that's a concrete bunker. And I guess it could be, if he is a doomsday prepper, that's his shelter, if you will. Perhaps the reason he needed all that concrete. But in that concrete bunker, there are bags with human remains in them. And those remains have not been determined just yet to be the Menards, but police do believe the Menards are dead. And they darn sure wanted to talk to old Sparky about it. And Sparky wasn't coming to the door. So then carry on. That's when they brought the go-go gadget tank out.
Right. Oh, yeah, that was big time. That they were coming battering ram on it. And I thought, they don't just do that to anybody's house unless there's something highly suspicious or dangerous or whatever, because old Sparky there, most people liked him. It was the Menard Sparky thing there, but now we're finding out horrible things about him. But he was down underneath the house, and it's rumored, I don't know if it's true or not, that they're nest of tunnels. They hadn't found any just yet.
Police said there weren't any tunnels, that it just went further back to the back of the yard, but maybe they're still investigating.
I think so, because he got himself barricaded down there, and that's the reason they had to be so aggressive. A drone couldn't get in there. The tat cat, the tank, it got stuck. So everything in the world was happening, and they didn't want to send guys and men in because they didn't know how stable the house was.
Right, or if he had bombs down there, or what he was willing to do to stop from being taken in.
Right, and so they get down there and basically have a standoff with him, and he's not coming out. And he's got his own rifle, so he basically tries to kill himself, but the rifle misfires.
So it doesn't go off.
Right. So then they get him, and they said, well, we've got him in custody. I wouldn't say he's cooperating, but we have him in custody.
Yeah, so I'm glad they got him without any incident. I'm glad that he actually wasn't able to hurt himself for a variety of reasons, but not the least of which, if he is the person who killed the Menards, I don't want to see him take the easy way out.
Oh, no. And, this is, I don't know, I've never been to a nudist colony. I know around here I hear people talk about one in Pace or Navarre or Jay. Yeah, and I'm like, how do I know this? I've read about it.
Well, it's one of those things that it is out of the norm, I think, for most most people. And so when you do hear about it, there's a part of it that's like, huh. But, as we've talked about before on the show, I also work for the Pensacola News Journal. And one of the reporters that I work with, Troy Moon, he recently covered a story on one of our local nudist colonies. And I think maybe if people aren't familiar, they must assume that it's just a bunch of swingers wanting to get busy. But that's not it at all. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't places like that, but the ones that I'm familiar with here locally through local reporting is it's more of a naturalist type environment. They just feel comfortable in the buff and to be in nature and then be a part of nature. And there's usually very strict rules with these things, that you have to be healthy, if you will, mentally healthy, I think is what I'm trying to say. You can't be going in there trying to be a perv or lewd lascivious. Right. They just want, it's about companionship and being normal and having friends and just enjoying each other's company and having the same sort of attitude towards nudity, if you will.
I think it's just like an uninhibited type of thing. Like they say, it's not sex, it's nudity. And they say the European people call that a naturist or a naturalist, like you said. And we say, Americans over here, we say nudist. So
they naked.
That's right. They think we're unsophisticated, but they might be right sometimes. I mean,
probably right.
Right. Well, they have a rule that you have to put a towel down before you sit down. I read some of these rules at some of these places, and no staring rule. You had to look people in the face.
Eyes up here.
Yeah. Well, that happens in real life sometimes, outside,
When I waited tables when I was in college, I remember, because you're right there at breast level with people who were sitting down at a table. There were so many times I wanted to turn and look and say, hey, they're not taking your order.
I am.
Up here. Look at me.
That's right.
I will.
Yeah. There's always something going on. But that was, they are good-natured people, and they knew that people wanted to understand, or, I don't have any untoward feelings toward people that have like a different, like they might want to live in Cordova Park. Might want to live at Scenic Hills, on the beach or out in a ranch in Cantonment type of thing. So I think we judge people too quickly.
Definitely.
And I think we need to that's why I read about it, because I want to learn stuff. I don't see me ever going to a nudist colony. There I'd be naked. There you go. There's your image. You're welcome. So.
I know. I hesitate to even tell this story, but it just amuses me. But and this is because clearly this is such a serious, sad situation. But I know one of the first times I ever even heard about a nudist colony was an old Peter Sellers movie my mom used to like to watch. And it was supposed to be a comedy, but they're investigating some case, and Peter Sellers, the actor, ends up in a nudist colony. And you don't see anything from the waist down, but he's standing there talking to people and his shirt's off, and he has like a strap to like a guitar that's hanging down. And he's using the guitar to cover himself, if you will. And then an attractive woman walks by, and you just hear a chord go, strum.
Okay.
I know. So he was making the inappropriate connection to the nudist colony, but that is not the environment that these people were living in. And again, by all accounts, they were very well liked. When I read up on it, the friend has done interviews with local media there and talked about how much people enjoy the Menards and how active they were, especially in their church. They went to potlucks. They, were very sweet by all accounts. I guess there was a problem, obviously, between the Menards and Sparky, but that's why they were very concerned when they didn't show up for church.
Oh, yeah. And there was also a contention between management and them, because it must be new management coming in, and they had a lawsuit against the management company. And I think several people did. And from what I've read on other things, that they kind of thought maybe Sparky kind of aligned with the management people. So you have that on top of the tree, or maybe not at all. But yes, they said that Stephanie was so beloved. She had multiple sclerosis. That's why she had a cane. And that she took care of Dan, because like you said, he would elope or wander or tell the same story a million times. I mean, all of us do that. But, so they were just a sweet, sweet couple. And Irene, the lady that reported them missing, they had a little thing. These people have lived there. The Menards had lived there for 15 years.
A long time.
Right. And basically Sparky had been there for about 30. Because when they opened his garage, there were just like bags and bags and bags, tippy-top full in his garage.
Of just stuff?
Just bags, like garbage bags. We're going to know what's in those eventually. I have no idea what that is there. But they were just so delightful. Irene said that Stephanie would call her husband, and then she would go pick up them and go to church and say it was what they did every Sunday. So they have routines. So when that happened, she thought, well, they just got a ride. But then when, like you said, when they looked in the house, TV's on, computer's on, dog's gone, everything's on, their car's parked down here.
Yeah,
something's wrong. But I love that they put out a silver alert. Have you seen those ever?
Yes.
On the interstate?
Yes.
Because I looked at that too to see each state kind of does theirs a little different. But it was like a couple and their dog on this silver alert. It made you look at that. And I think their church put that out.
That's wonderful. Silver alert because they're vulnerable and they're older.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But yeah, I did think that was interesting too, that neighbors, as anybody would, were speculating who could have done something. Why would this happen to them? And before Sparky was caught, there had been discussions that maybe the couple was they actually already were feeling harassed and fearful because they were a part of this lawsuit against the ranch. They were unhappy with new management and some of the changes they had made and felt like it was degrading the quality of life there, from everything from maintaining the pool to the quality of the restaurant. And so they worried that may have had something to do with their disappearance. I guess we don't really know yet if police said Sparky's not really cooperating and telling them what's up. But you never know with people. I mean, clearly with all these cases that we talk about. But, you know, if everybody got along with Sparky and the Menards and those two being right next door to each other, that's probably worth a whole segment in and of itself. All the stories of just neighbor on neighbor, that whole love thy neighbor sometimes is easier to say than it's easier to do when you're right next door to people and they're doing things that you don't like. And maybe he had some stressors or problems in other areas, already had some mental illness. I'm guessing some anger issues, to say the least, because why in the world would you kill both of them over trimming a tree?
Yeah.
So
how would you get them? How would you get them there? There's a lot of how questions. And what struck me about reading and learning about this community is that this community seemed like they watched out for people way more than, say, a community outside of there.
Yes, that's right.
And then most of the time they're clothed. It's this nudity is optional, I think. And, and if they go to the pool or what have you, I don't know all that. I didn't read all that far. But it struck me how kind they are to each other and helpful. It's almost like, you know, I'm 65. So I've got my friends, you know, we're all getting older. And some of them have moved to the villages. Okay. So that's kind of a contained
And that's
community.
an assisted living area.
Well, it's just older folks, and you can get help if you need it. Some folks don't need it at all. Like, I could go to the villages, and I've thought about it because it looks like fun, and it looks like they
have different levels. Some levels are assisted, and some are more independent.
Right, and some are they're just like neighborhoods, like the one you live in, I live in. And it is remarkable to me. They've got their own communities that really don't have to go outside of that much. But the Zumba and the I don't play cards or bingo or anything, but the trails and walking and having people your own age to do stuff with, you know, that's, I think, entices people.
Yes.
But if you get stuck right next door to someone that's like diametrically opposed to you, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to sell my $300,000 house because of you.
Right.
You know, but you don't want to mix it up with them either. But he's 79 years old with dementia.
I know. They weren't going to be on this planet too terribly much longer anyway.
No.
It's heartbreaking. And then I wonder how, if Sparky is the person who did this to them, as police say, how he got them to that point. What did he do? And, you know, like if their car's parked on the side of the road, it makes me think that somehow he managed to stop them.
I think about that too, because they have a golf cart too that they just milled around the place, and the golf cart was there. But I figure he might have done something like with the dog. You know, I don't know, you know, lured the dog or whatever. Because how do you get two people that he's not very ambulatory? She's not either without her cane. So I think maybe it is something with the dog at their house. It's all speculation.
And then drove the car to make it look like.
He put the car there. He did that, in my opinion.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's just some sort of luring that I feel like he did.
Yes. Well, and I am grateful. I think it's, if nothing else, it's important to know your neighbors. And that way people are aware if your routine is changing changed or if something's different, there's somebody there to check on you, especially when you're older and vulnerable like that.
Yeah, my neighbors know, my habits and comings and goings, and I know my neighbors real well. And that I enjoy that. I like that. I like living in a neighborhood. And apparently they did too,
Well, and if Sparky did, he didn't get to anymore. He was booked to the West Valley Detention Center. So we'll continue to follow this case and see what becomes of Sparky and if we learned anything else about why he did what he did and how he killed them.
Yeah, I think preppers sometimes, and I don't know, I'm not a prepper either, are prepared for any emergency, so they
Yikes.
kind of isolate from other people. If you're obsessed with that, you're not necessarily doing people skills.
Right.
I figure if it's time because I'm happy to go.
Right.
It'll be all right.
Agreed. I feel the same way. Awesome. Well, Pam, anything else you think would be important to add?
I just think that know your neighbors, and if you have intuition, you think something's wrong. You know how we say, see something, say something? My pet peeve is, okay, so what? See something, say something, do something. Make sure the police heard you or can't come there. Follow up. Because it's no joke, it didn't take him but a little while to kill them. I mean, we don't know if those are their remains in there, but they suspect that.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll get some more answers for that community. And God bless those folks for keeping an eye on their neighbors and alerting them.
Right. In the next community over, they did a vigil for Dan and Stephanie, and they said they just wanted to be good neighbors also. So it was so sweet and everything, but so sad.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Pam, thank you so much for joining me on this one.
You're welcome.
And we appreciate you for joining us as well. That is it for the Menards Vanish. Did doomsday prepper murder elderly couple at family-friendly nudist ranch. We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Gulf Coast Confidential. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher Pam Hill. And a big thanks, as always, to our director, editor, and production engineer, James Roy. And remember, you can listen to more of our Gulf Coast Confidential conversations wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And don't forget, you can watch on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel as well. Just don't forget to like and subscribe.
Subscribe.
We'll see you next time.